Yo guys, I just saw that there was a StarCraft 2 balance patch recently, and then I thought, could it be true that we're gonna get a Warcraft 3 patch as well? I've been kind of out of the loop. I play every now and then, but sure enough, one of my longtime viewers came today and said there actually has been an announcement 42 minutes ago. Warcraft 3 Reforged PTR version 135. I was just thinking it had gotten a little bit stale, the meta. You know, the old imbalances and forced play styles. We went a long distance from the 2009 meta of Orc Night Elf, where Orcs played Grunt Raider Walker, Blade TC, and Night Elves played Masked Druids of the Talon. Now it's a lot of Huntresses and Archers, and although I think Night Elf has the flexibility to play different styles, we see some Bears, we see some Talons, and Orc has more flexibility as well. We see some Tower expansions, some Headhunters. If a Night Elf wants to, they can still spam Huntress Archer, and well, I feel like it's quite tough to stop on equal skill level. There are other problems as well. Human cannot play on one base against Undead, for instance. They need to expand or die. Pretty much the same against Night Elf for the most part. Human must expand or die. Can any of these imbalances or design problems be solved or not? And even if they don't, Warcraft 3 is still a great game with a great esports scene. But let's check it out. Change for the sake of change is always fun as well. I have not been a part of discussions for this patch. I have been for many patches in the past, though, you know, whatever feedback they take is always up to them. I don't even know who them is right now. So I'm half surprised that there is a patch. I didn't see this coming. Let's check it out. We've opened up the PTR for testing the next version over the holidays. Custom campaigns, balance updates, map pool updates, leaderboard fixes, and additional improvements. Thank you for testing the PTR, and special thanks to all the community content creators who created new and updated old maps. Custom campaigns. I let you read this yourself. Let's jump into balance. Tavern revive cost increased by 5% at all levels. Interesting. I think Tavern rebuy is probably a little bit too good. Probably. The way Dota solves it, sorry to mention the name of the new flame, is that you can only buy back once every 7 minutes. But in Warcraft, sometimes we see Lich rebuy, Lich rebuy, Lich rebuy, Lich wins. Or TC rebuy, TC rebuy. I remember a Turtle Rock game where I did that. 5% more is not a big difference, so I don't think it's going to move the needle all too much. Nor do I think that buyback is the same value for every race. I feel like it should cost 5% more for Undead and Night Elf, but not for Orc. Is that biased? Is that a crime? If so, arrest me and put me in your dungeon. Blacksmith lumber cost reduced from 60 to 50. This is vaguely reminiscent of something. I don't even remember now if this was part of my balance suggestions or Remo Demo. Probably Remo suggested this. Peasant HP increase, so that's to make them less harassable. This is a major thing that people try against human, always harass peasants. And you kind of have to, because they can power build, so they can expand the best, therefore you should harass. But then it's still possible when they're on one base, so that's why they have to expand so that they can mitigate losses. Yes, this is fantastic. I'm pretty sure this would have been in my balance changes. Control Magic, for some reason, Neo Blizzard, when Reforged was announced, Neo Blizzard moved Control Magic to tier 2. Human was, at that time, quite strong. Now, arguably, they're a little weaker. But I don't think this was a great change, because it made basically all spellcasters of all races against human with Spellbreaker useless. Especially Orcish spellcasters, like, I mean, Destroyers and Dryads are still good, right? But Talons, Shamans, Witch Doctor, Necromancer, pretty much unplayable. So now they have to invest in the tier 3 and the Breaker. That's a really big difference, and I think it should be this way. I've also, Siphon mana cost increase, that's good. So Siphon mana takes 15, 30, 45 mana per tick per level. So it's 15 at level 1, it's 30 at level 2, it's 45 at level 3, I believe. and then you have to break the siphon and walk away. It only costs 10, so even if you break it instantly, they still gain 5, which is weird that it's a win-win. Even if you're like really good at interrupting it fast. I guess most abilities are a win-win. Like Stormbolt is a win-win, you deal damage and stun, but it's so spammable with the short cooldown. I actually had the idea that you could slightly increase the cooldown when it's against enemies, so that interrupting it is more valuable. But slightly reduce the cooldown when you give it to Paladin and Mountain King and Archmage, the mana, because that will enable more interesting Blood Mage MK Pala play, which everyone thinks is really fun to watch and to play with. And it's different than the Archmage meta. But they're just gonna plus 10 mana. The drain rate goes down. I think this is in line with basically post-release philosophy that mana drain is really, really powerful, mana burn. And this is one that had never been addressed yet. Mana burn from Demon Hunter was addressed and weakened. And now Siphon Mana is going to get a little bit similar treatment. I think it's fair. It's still like insanely good at level 2 and 3. Holy Light cooldown reduction, I like it. It's a buff to the Paladin. It's going to help them to respond better against Coil Nova nukes in the human undead matchup. It mostly addresses that matchup. Holy Light does, of course, heal as well, but it can only be used aggressively against undead. So this is why we see more Paladin against undead. So any buff that only targets undead human matchup is probably a good thing, as this is a top difficult matchup for them, human undead. Overall, it's just a buff to Paladin, which I think is fine. It could be strong, but let's see how it plays out. Polymorph cost reduced from 220 to 200. I think that's fine. Polymorph pretty much never gets used. Like, it just doesn't get used. Sorceresses don't really upgrade to Masters. They stay in Adept or Initiate. They do Slow and they do Invis and never Poly. So I don't think this is going to make it playable, but this is in line with the attempts to make Blade Master Mirror Image playable. And finally, after 3 mana cost reductions, it is. We see some Blade Master Mirror Image. Polymorph is one of those very expensive spells that barely ever gets used. Minus 20 mana. Mechanical Critter's sight range increased from 350 to 500. Almost a meme status unit, 50 gold from the Arcane Vault. If you right-click a normal neutral critter, it doesn't die. If you right-click a mechanical critter, it dies. So anytime you wonder when you're against human, if it's real, you can just try to right-click it. And if it dies, it was fake. You can also just attack all critters on sight. That's what I do. Just kill everything, kill all the animals. It's nice. But buffing it a bit, I think it's fine. Mechanical Critter is one of the rarely ever used things that has no chance of becoming imbalanced because you can just kill it in one shot. And it's up to the skill of the player to find critters and kill them. Some people have made year-long habits of killing all the critters they see, and I guess they will have an advantage. But anyway, giving it some bonus sight range can be useful to allow humans to use this fun scouting tool and get some information. It can never be too reliable of a tool because, you know, it dies at once, costs 50 gold, it's quite expensive. So I don't think this is imbalanced. In fact, this may not be enough, but I think it's a nice change. Siege Engine now has heavy armor. What? What? So no more building armor. So before you could counter Siege Engines primarily with catapults and normal attack damage, like Abomination Ghoul, Grunts, Raiders, obviously, you know, Ghouls and Mud Golem and Ogre Mauler and Meat Wagon, Glaive Thrower and Huntress. These were some of the main ways to deal with them, Ancients of War. Now heavy armor, that's gonna make the following units destroy them. Chimera, Frostworm, Destroyer, Sorceress, Witch Doctor. It's weird. It's a big change. Why? Can now attack units? What? Base damage 44 to 22. Barrage damage increase. So they're going to be like this slow, still tanky, anti-light air unit. They get better against light air. They do take more damage from light air. 100% instead of, I don't know, 25% or so. But light air is still not going to want to fight against them. Like, You're not going to bring 12 gargoyles to fight 3 siege engines, whether they have heavy or fortified, I think. Unless you have heal scrolls, I guess. To be honest, it sounds like they'll suck, if I'm being honest here. You're not going to be able to use them against Frostworm. You already kind of were not able to. Maybe in FFA you could use them against Chimera. And you use them against buildings, obviously. They do half damage to buildings. Do they still have siege damage? I guess they still do siege damage. So now siege engines are a counter to huntresses? I need to try this out. This is just weird. I want to see how they match up in different matchups, but I can't see them being like part of an early to mid game strat like this. Half damage against ground. They're too slow to catch any air, so they're better against air, but they're too slow to catch. Can I make one siege engine and park it in my peasant line to stop zeppelins and gargs? Doesn't sound fantastic. And just the fact that they get countered so hard by magic damage, I think it makes them useless. Imagine if siege engines were the counter to mass gargoyle strategies. And you would make them, and it would just own gargs. What's to stop Undead from just waiting a bit, getting a worm, and just 3-shotting them? Nothing. They'll just do it. Strange. Yeah, they're big in FFA, I know. But like, is this an FFA change? Is that why we're doing it? For the 100 people in the world that play FFA? What about the thousands that play one-on-one and team games? Where they pretty much don't see play, and they probably still won't? I guess they see play in 4-on-4, actually. I don't know, I think it's weird. It seems like a big nerf. Mass teleport cooldown from 20 to 30, I think that's fair. One of the best ults in the game. Really short cooldown. Mortar team HP up by 20. Okay. That is a buff against Orc. That is a buff against Necro Wagon. A bit. Right? It's a buff against Night Elf. The biggest one, I would argue. And it's even a bit of a buff against Human. Human Mirror if you want to go for Night Mortar against Spellbreaker Caster. Night Mortar is the more fun strat to play and to watch than Moss Breakers. I don't think 20 health more on Mortar team and Control Magic and this, I don't think these are gonna make Human Mirror move away from Moss Spellbreaker Mirror. I don't think there's enough. You could say, well, peasants can survive the transition to castle better, and to get knights and workshop, I need to spend 10 lumber less, and it's more worth it to get my paladin out, so I want to rush to tier 3 against this Spellbreaker spammer. And I can scout when they're going to attack me with this critter. And once I get my mortar, I have 20 health more. But I don't think any of that really works to beat a normal Spellbreaker timing. I don't think it's enough. So I think the changes are fine so far. But I don't think it's going to move the needle all that much. Next.
WC3 balance patch Monkaham.
Monkaham. Orc, most people feel like headhunters are too good. They're gonna have 20 gold cost more and 10 lumber cost more. This is just a DPS versus cast thing, where headhunters and berserkers in particular just rank better than rifles, fiends, and snipers. Rifles, fiends, and archers for DPS. Not true, of course, if they have bottom true shot 3 and there's a bunch of Orb of Venom, then archers do more. They can also target fire better. I think it's a big cost increase. I think Orc will suffer a lot from this unless they have other buffs, so let's check it out. Reserve Judgment. I think if Headhunters go down and like grunts go up, that's fine. Blade Master Mirror Image now do 10% of the blade's base damage. Pretty big. Pretty big. Not that big. They're gonna do between 3 to 5 damage. It does mean they will cancel Clarity, but they already did. Even 0 damage illusions cancelled Clarity. I think it's cool. Does it include crits? That's a good question. I believe it does. I feel like I've tested this before. In fact, I feel like this is straight... Yeah, Jules, if you listen to this, maybe you can splice it with my patch suggestion video, but I do believe this one... Well, maybe you can compare all the changes if you feel like it. But anyway, this was in my patch suggestion, and I tested it on the test map that the W3 Champions lads made for us. Endurance aura movement speed bonus reduced. This is similar treatment to Unholy Aura, right? Witch Doctor healing wards. Health increased from 5 to 10 HP. Okay. Everything still one-shots it. Except an Acolyte has a 50% chance to one-shot it. And a Peon will not. Nor will a Peasant. But everything else still does. Oh! And mirror images! May not. Yeah. Stasis trap activation delay reduced from 9 to 7. And brute strength bonus from 100 to 150. So grunts do get buffed. Okay, I think this is cool. The number one strength of Orc gets nerfed. Tiny buff to mirror image. Nerf to aura. Buffs, 2 buffs to Witch Doctor and 1 buff to grunts. I think Orc overall will get weaker from this. But at least there's something fun new to try. We can look at Blade Master, we can look at Witch Doctors, and we can look at grunts. There's 3 things that are exciting to try out. For human, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things to try out. And then others are nerfs. So whether you think overall stronger, weaker, there are new things to try out. 9 so far. 9 changes to try out. I'm looking at the ones that are giving an option rather than weakening something, right? Night Elf. Oh, thank God. Tranquility is the most egregiously OP ult. Not the least of which, because there's only about... Let's see. I think I'm correct if I say that there's 4 ults that are very valid to use outside of combat. When you're not attacking buildings and when you're not attacking units, there are 4 ultimates that are amazing. Can you guys think of which one? It's the Alchemist Transmute. You can cast it on creeps, get money. Mass Teleport. Tranquility. And Doom. You can summon a Doom Guard from a creep. You probably won't, but you can. You could say Doom and Phoenix can both be used in creeping, right? But yeah, Charm. I'd say Charm even more than Doom or Phoenix. But it's about 3 to 4, and among those, Tranquility is by far the best outside of combat. I guess together with Mass Teleport. So generally, it makes sense that something that can only be used in combat can have a large cooldown so that you can't constantly fight with it. Imagine if Demon Hunter Metamorphosis had no cooldown and you could use it all the time. That would just be like game over immediately, right? But Tranquility, you can be like, I'm hurt. I can either heal my 14 units from Moonwell or I could just cast Tranquility. I'll have it again in any battle, anytime. It's no problem at all, right? Like they don't even think about it. They just do Tranquility and then they heal their keeper from the Moonwell and they're done. It's so strong. If anything, Tranquility should have the Blade Storm cooldown, 240 seconds. Now you're going to think about it. Do I use it in battle or outside? Because it could get cancelled. But 60 seconds was like anytime, bro. So that's a good nerf. It's still 2 minutes. That's still half of Blade Storm, which is like 4 minutes, right? It's very powerful. It even heals Glaive Throwers and Mountain Giants. Starfall cooldown reduced. Again, correct. This one cannot be used outside of combat. You don't use it on creeps. You just go for enemy buildings or enemy units and buildings. It's very long cooldown. It can get interrupted like that. So it makes sense it's a little shorter. Gives you more opportunities to play with it. And it's fun. Mana cost down, which makes sense because Searing Arrow often makes it so that you can't even cast it. I mean, you could bring Mana Pot, same as Blade Storm. We always don't have mana for Blade Storm too, so you're gonna have to get Mana Pot. Druid of the Talent Crow form now does piercing damage instead of magic. Damn. So they're gonna be monstrous at destroying Wind Riders, Dragonhawks, So they're counter to Dragon Ox now. Oh my god. They're counter to Destroyers now. What? Oh my god. This does make them weaker against Gyrocopters, but they already probably don't super work against Gyros. Despite having double damage against them, they're very low HP, like 380 or something against Flak Cannon. I don't think they loved that matchup before. This is enormous. Are Destroyers good against Night Elf? I'd say so. They counter Bears really hard, which means that Night Elf can only play Bears when they have mass Hippogriffs. Now they can play Talons, and Talons are very good. You know, this could actually be super broken. I think you can just play Mass Talons now against Undead. You know the Fairy Dragon strategy? Yeah. Think of, instead of 20 fairies, you have 20 Talons. You have Cyclone. You Cyclone all the Undead heroes. You Fairy Fire them, focus them with Orb of Venom and Tangle. If you want to dispel it and get Destroyers, guess what? 10 piercing Talons, like that. Doesn't that just destroy Undead? Imagine massing Talons against Undead. Yeah, I'm imagining it right now. I see crying Undeads. The biggest problem is, to do this, you need an expansion, and you need tier 3. Undead non-stop pressures you. They are not magic immune like fairies and dryads. So among the two popular spamming units, dryads and fairies, now you would add a third, which is Talon, which can be nuked. And they need lots of healing. They need lots of mana from Moonwell to heal them because, well, you can't heal Talons on the Moonwells, just like fairies. Because, I mean, not efficiently. So you would need Heal Scroll. It's very expensive. It's pretty tough. Interesting. It obviously Orc can pretty much not play Wind Riders against Elf anyway. Everything counters Wind Riders. Archers, Demon Hunter, Bears, Mountain Giants, everything counters Wind Riders. Talons, Hippogriffs. Even if the opponent has Chimera, you can't go Wind Riders because they just use Orb of Venom. Yeah, Druids of the Talon are going to get spanked by Nova, so that is a problem. Talons still need catch on Destroyers. I guess you could just fly away, lol, with Destroyer in order to not die to Talon. You Nova the Talons and you just fly away. Problem being, your hero gets cycloned, and then they're going to focus the hero. Then your Destroyer needs to come back and it gets shot. This could be one of the biggest changes of the patch. Entangle duration. Oh, by the way, it also makes them weaker against Zeppelins. It's worth noting. I've tried many Zeppelin escapes against Talons in my days. Entangle duration on units reduced. Okay, I think that's a healthy change for the Orc Night Elf matchup, for the Orc Human matchup, and even for the Orc Undead matchup. It makes a difference. This actually means that level 2 Entangle will not one-shot Headhunters without Troll regeneration anymore. I think it was like 1 attack, 1 Entangle, they walk away, it's dead. Which is fair, considering they're more expensive now. Now they need like 3 attacks or 4 attacks. Which is much harder. If you had regen, you could survive. But it was really tough for like the first Headhunters. Thorn's aura increased from 10% damage return to melee, 20%, 30% to 15, 30, 45. Oh my god, bro. Okay, question. What do you do against level 3 Thorns, Mass Mountain Giant? Either in 101 or team play. If you are human or orc. I guess human plays rifle inner fire, and then you both have an army that cannot die, but then Orb of Fire will kill things. Just leave the game, I think. Get a Dreadlord. Just get Dreadlord, go mass schools. Your radar lame? Doesn't work, man. Doesn't work. So this looks really scary, but I'm assuming they will come up with a nerf against Hardened Skin. They better, or I'm out. Okay, good. All right. That's exactly what I was suggesting. I was suggesting for years that Mountain Giants, I think we can say One thing I'm sure everyone will agree with. Tier 2 mountain giants suck the buttocks. We can all agree. And that's not a healthy design. That you can make them in tier 2, but they just suck. Like, you won't use them. Then, the second one might be more contentious. I believe it, you may or may not agree. Tier 3 mountain giants with hardened skin and resistant skin are OP donuts. So how do you fix it? You bring up tier 2 MGs and you bring down tier 3 MGs. And overall, this does that. Oh, oops, spoiler. Overall, this does that. So I think that's good. Ultra Vision now requires tier 2. That is such a healthy change! I didn't even think about this. That's such a healthy change. I think this is the best change of the entire patch so far. After 19 years! 19 years of map hacking night elves. The first 5 minutes of the game. They just see you. You just don't see them. They're just waiting until you start creeping. There's nothing you can do. This is huge. This is huge. Loliot suggested that change. Loliot is a pro night elf. What a good human being. I love him so much. So that's a really good change. Immolation mana drain. That's a good change too. Immolation mana drain reduced from 7 to 5. It's so expensive. This is one of the worst hero abilities in the game. But I wouldn't mind if it did 10% more damage too. Wow. That's 50% more. 33% more. 20% more. Hey, I said 10%. Oi. Surprise, mother trucker. Okay, well, that's, you know what? Immolation duration reduced. Oh, when you detach yourself from the demon, the amount of burn time you get as you walk away is less long. Okay. Mana burn still better. Look, the real Giga Chats won't take evasion anymore, Cloud Mephisto. Just get mana burn and immolation, like Suho in 2006. He would like suicide his demon hunter in a peasant line over and over and over and then pick mana burn. I think this is cool. So how many fun things did Night Elf get to try out and play with? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 6, 3, 5 things to try out. How much is that? 14. 14. All right, let's check out Undead. Do you think they will have given Acolytes invulnerability status while they're on the gold mine, like Happy suggested? Or are they sane? Let's check it out. Anti-magic shield can now receive the same summon magic damage inflicted by Dispel, Purge, and Abolish magic. Wow. Oh my god. 21. So, does anyone need this explained? Not so anti-magic anymore. Yeah, this is anti-magic shield. Okay, so anti-magic shield does two things. You cast a buff on an allied unit, encasing them in the anti-magic shield. This buff will absorb 300 points of magic damage before it disappears, or it disappears when it times out. But it does a second, less noticeable, less known thing. It changes the armor type. An abomination with heavy armor will take 200% damage from a destroyer with magic damage. So if a destroyer deals 300 damage, the abomination should take 600 damage. But the anti-magic shell doesn't care about armor type. It is neutral in its armor type. So it will take 300 magic damage, block it, then it goes away. So essentially, on certain units, heavy armor in particular, it's twice as effective. Instead of 300, it blocks 600. But you could not dispel it at all. The only way that you could deal with it is to suck it up deal the damage, and then get through it, and hope it doesn't get recast. In Undead Mirror in particular, with Undead being such a good nuke race, with all the heroes nuking and the destroyers on the field, even a couple of Banshees, it was meta to encase your entire army in Magic Shell. Once you get to the 70, 80 population, you'll see two giant armies of green balls banging against each other. So now, with Destroyer Devour, or Spirit Walker Disenchant, you can remove anti-Magic Shell from the units. It deals that damage. Most Dispel deals 200 plus damage, 225 or something, to summoned units, and it will do now the same against the anti-Magic Shell, which means 2 Dispels from any unit, like Priest, Walker, Destroyer, will remove all shells in the area. Wait, anti-Magic Shield. I think it's meant to be called Shell, am I wrong? Isn't it Anti-Magic Shield, the potion from the shop of Night Elves? And it's called Anti-Magic Shell from the Undead Banshee? Yeah, they miswrote it. But it's under the Undead header, so it is what it is. It is what we thought it is, right? Do we like that change? Do you like its side? Generally, play and counterplay is good. That you have a counter to something is good. But whether the result of it is healthy, that I don't know. You think it's interesting, says Side? I wonder what it addresses. Besides Undead Mirror, I don't see a lot of AMS versus Elf, Human, and Orc. Actually, I think Human is the next go-to, isn't it? I think this is a buff to Human. Human against Undead. Oh, you play Human now. Ah, thanks for the disclaimer. Loyalties have shifted. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I'll keep it at that, and I don't know if it's healthy yet. As long as our dad is now back forever from getting a pack of 6, then this is fine. I said the same thing in 2018-19-20. It's okay to try Huntress and Keeper buffs because Blizzard's here to stay. And the reason I knew that is because they promised it to me in real life when I went to do the Reforged announcement. And it still hurts to know that it was a lie, that it was not true. But they're back now for good this time, I'm sure. So let's try it out. And if it doesn't work, we can just be agile and change it in a week, 2 weeks, a month. Unholy Aura movement speed reduced. Yeah, I think that's okay. Movement speed is very powerful. Animated dead corpses, reminds me of my high school, can now be killable and have diseased cloud when researched. Oh my god! Animated dead corpses can now be killable and... That's cool. Yo, thanks for the prime. That's really cool. Your deadbeat dad is here, says go back to Dota. Excuse me. Your deadbeat dad is in chat. Okay. Yeah, I think that's really cool. So what does it mean? Diseased Cloud is a 100 gold, 225 wood upgrade that applies to abominations. It gives them a particular miasma that is unstandable by units around them. It gives them 2 damage per second, I believe it is right now. Sometimes it was 1 damage per second over 3 minutes. Now it's 2 damage per second over 1.5 minutes. Undispellable. It ruins priest healing if you leave autocast on. It ruins dryads in the daytime. Even nighttime a bit. It's strong. And it's on Meatwagon and Abom, and it's mostly used against human and elf. And it's never used against orc, and it is never used against undead, because undead are immune to it. So this would be a buff to undead against night elf and humans, specifically when Death Knight reaches level 6, casts the animated dead ultimate, which revives the 6 strongest nearby enemy, neutral, or allied units, and animates their corpse and makes them fight for 30 seconds. Now, they were eatable by Death Pact and Dark Ritual, but otherwise spell and physical immune. just like the avatars of the Avatar of Vengeance from Warden. But now they're going to be killable, which is a nerf, but it's also a buff to noobs, because noobs will auto attack, and then auto attacks will land on top of these meaningless units, right? They'll give XP if they die, probably, because it's a summon. But you'd rather kill a real Frostworm than a fake Abomination. And so it's a buff to enemy auto attackers, because their attacks will get lost and not always hit the real thing. But assuming higher level of play, if a player decided they didn't want to focus the unit at all, then it makes no change that they're attackable. You still wouldn't. So then it's only a buff. That they now have Disease Cloud, they're a bigger threat. And maybe if a good player did decide that it would be the right play to kill summon after summon, then it's a nerf for them, because now they're killable. Depends on the situation. Maybe they're the only army that's there, right? Now the question is actually, are they dispellable or just physically attackable? That I don't know yet. It's a buff and it's mostly a nerf. Overall, I would say it's a buff. These throwaway units now apply disease to everyone. You send them places and they disease things. If it is researched, though. Honestly, if they're too weak, I feel like they could just remove this part. They always have Disease Cloud, even when not researched. That would be interesting. That would actually be really strong. Ghouls. Ghoul Frenzy now adds 30 HP to Ghouls' base health. This is really interesting, because I think 4 months ago, everyone would agree with this, or most people would agree. Maybe not biased Night Elves, but generally ghouls were unusable against Orc. Ghouls were used for a small period of time with Ghoul Frenzy, maybe up to 8 ghouls max against Night Elf, and then infinitely replaced by either Garg or by Fiends, sometimes even Abomination. Ghouls are practically not used against human, except as peasant harassers, super late game. Outside of the Dreadlord fast expand meta that we saw like 2 years ago, before people got better at stopping it. So generally, Ghoul Frenzy doesn't get used a lot. Giving Undead another way to play, which isn't Fiend, Orb of Corruption, can be nice. I like it. But Ghoul Frenzy and Ghouls actually now get used quite a bit more against Orc.
Hi.
And that this makes them even stronger. I think Ghouls are actually quite strong against Orc now. With Headhunters getting more expensive, Blade Master Mirror Image is completely useless against Undead. Endurance is nerfed, but so is Unholy. Witch Doctor and Stasis are buffed. Are we going to use Witch Doctors against Undead? Most likely not. I think they see a Witch Doctor, they Coil Nova at its dead. Then again, one Witch Doctor with Sentry can be nice to control the map, who knows. Grunts are a little better, but Grunts get eaten alive by Destroyers. So how do you counter Ghoul Destroyer? Not with Witch Doctor, not with Grunts. Headhunters are weaker, not with Mirror Image. So I think overall, until now, Undead got buffed quite a bit against Orc. And it is debatable whether that is a good thing or not. I think Undead beats Orc. But long time the thought has been that Orc beats Undead. Ghoul Frenzy is better. Rod of Necromancy cooldown has been reduced again. This is a small revert of an earlier change. Disease Cloud duration is now 2 damage for 1.25 minute instead of 1.5 minute. Obsidian Statue now will give more XP. 60 instead of 40. That's it. Yeah, I think Orc already had the upper hand, and I think it's worse now. So I think Orc Undead matchup will get worse. It's a big buff to Undead against Orc. Undead against Elf. Let's see. Undead against Elf. Almost meaningless. Nerf to Undead. Almost meaningless because there's mana burn. Bit of a buff. Yeah, quite a big buff. Quite a big buff to the timing attack, actually. The first timing attack. Buff and nerf. So I will say this is a late game thing, and this is an early game thing, and this is a nerf. Overall, I would say Undead got buffed against Night Elf from the Undead's perspective. MGs do get used against Undead, but it's so late game that they are very uncommon. You could try to use Immolation to deal with ghouls. Pretty tough, but you can try. That means you have no evasion and no mana. Thorns get buffed, so that helps. This is a nerf. This is a buff. This is meaningless against Undead, meaningless against Undead, nerf. Overall, I would say Undead got buffed against Night Elf. Especially because of Entangle, Ghoul Frenzy, and Necromancy. I don't think Thorns... this will be the big question. Vinegar's dry. Incinerator Komisher, thanks guys. I think Talents, Murder Destroyers is going to be the biggest change. So not looking at Talents. Like if Talents end up being viable, Night Elf might have got buffed against Undead, which they kind of need. Undead has a small edge. But if Talents end up not being usable because you can't make the timing work, which I think we'll need a few months to see, then Undead got buffed against Elf. Undead against Human, I would say Human got buffed against Undead. Did it? Positive, meaningless, potentially positive, potentially a nerf, right? Nerf, buff, potentially meaningless, nerf, but uncommon, very uncommon. Archmage MK Paladin got buffed because of Blacksmith, Peasant, and Holy Light. The rest didn't really change. From the Undead side, Dispel can now remove AMS, which is a buff to Rifle Priest, Inner Fire. They're slower, which is a big buff to Human against Undead. Ghouls makes a small change. Necromancy makes slightly better early game for Undead. Disease Cloud sometimes comes into play, and that helps Human as well. Overall, Human got buffed against Undead, whereas Undead got buffed against Elf and Orc. And I'm not sure it's right. I think Undead has the... I think Undead's the best race right now. I think so. But not always by that much. But I think they take small W's against Elf and Orc in the patch. But I could be wrong because of this. Now, let's look at Orc against Elf. Nerf. Buff. We definitely use Mirror Image against Elf. Nerf. We can definitely use Witch Doctors. But we mostly use one with Sentries when we play Grunt Shaman. And now it might be more worth it to try and get Stasis and Healing Ward. Not because of this. Maybe because of this. This is nice. And then this is pretty big. 50 health bonus for Grunts is going to help a lot in the Grunt Shaman strat against Hunter's Archer. So with this and this, Blade Shadow means Endurance doesn't come into play. Orc takes a W against Night Elf. This is another win for Orc against Elf, as is the Ultra Vision change. And then MGs get used against Orc, and especially tier 3 MG are a problem. So that's a nerf. And Tangle got nerfed, so that's another help for Orc. This one could bite Orc back a bit again if Thorns get used. Overall, I would say Orc takes a big W over Elf in this patch, and they needed it. Elf dominated Orc quite a bit. We can't use Headhunters as much, but it helps with the standard meta. I'll say it helps a 1 or 2%. Then finally, Orc against Human.
I can't sleep with socks.
Buff to Human, buff to Human, buff to Orc, to Human, but mostly meaningless. Late game could help Human in Echo Isles, 2 versus 2 base. And then we use loads of Headhunters against Human, so that's a nerf. This is a buff. This is almost useless, though Control Magic may make a difference. This is a nerf. We do use TC, and we don't use Image. So overall, I would say the blacksmith and the peasant change is going to help standard one base rifle caster, which is pretty competitive against orc. But I'll say the human rifle priest was very close in strength to orc headhunter shaman or headhunter kodo. Now with the endurance and the headhunter nerf and the buff to peasant and blacksmith, I think it will help human a bit. The grunts did get stronger though, and those can be used as well against blacksmith. I think pala rifle strategies get a little better. I think it helps quite a bit, makes it faster. Overall, I think this patch helps human against orc a bit, especially because of this. And that's a good thing because they needed it. Orc had an upper hand against human. Then Night Elf and human. I will say human takes a W against elf, and they needed it. So I think 7 out of 10 changes in general target the correct outcome. And therefore, I do rate this patch 7 out of 10 for balance shifts. And I rate it a 10 out of 10 for unexpected patch where I expected none anymore, with diligence and pretty good understanding of the game. So yeah, for the fact that there's a new change, like there are new changes, and for this one, I think very, very good. It's very good. Well done. Well done. Wand of Illusion now is 2 charges. I think that's fine. Wand of Mana, more Mana Steal. I think Wand of Mana Steal is better than people think. You steal 100 mana, so you gain 100, they lose 100. That's 200 mana transfer with the flexibility of 2 charges. 200 mana is more than a mana pot. You sell Wand of Mana for 200, and then you buy a mana pot for 200, get 150 in the old mana pot, not the new. It was better than a mana pot, but it did have double the cost. But you couldn't buy it, you could only sell it. So selling it and then buying a mana pot, I think is bad. Though gaining 150 mana at once can be more useful than gaining 50 and then 50, and it's also more and it's at once. I do think Wand of Mana Steal was better than what people thought. So this feels like an overbuff. But I do think that now people are going to be legit excited when they get it. Like, this is super strong. I think it's too strong. I think it should be 50 or 60. But 75, I think it's too much. I think it's going to be one of the best drops that you can get. But anyway, it's worth 400 gold if you were to buy it. So maybe it's okay to be quite strong. Grubby just got Love Bomb with the 10 out of 10. Yep. Getting a patch where I expected none. 10 out of 10. Blizzard loves us. I forgive everything. Circlet stats reduce from +2 to all stats to 112, but players can toggle the item to add. Oh my god. Dota Power Treads! Oh my god. Dota Power Treads. Wow. It's Vambrace. Yeah. That's so funny. Legion, Doomhorn, movement speed reduced, and Django as well. Okay. Map pool. I mean, I think this is cool. Circlet's too good. Now you can toggle it. It's pretty cool. So Warcraft players are gonna have to get used to the BBQB meta. Tap, intelligence, Stormbolt, back to strength. In this patch, we're updating the existing map pools. Okay, previously when Blizzard took maps recently from the community, they always implemented the wrong version because they didn't care enough to find the correct version. They wouldn't ask us, they wouldn't take our version, they would upload a version that's like 10 versions old and it would just suck. It wouldn't be the one we use in tournaments, it would have bugs, it would have like... Let's see how it goes this time. Bug fixes. None that I recognize in gameplay. Yeah. Our client works like shit. We fixed 2% of it. Cool. Cool. Okay, I wonder what this does to custom campaigns. I would have to ask around in the community to see where this leaves the campaign, custom games, and clans and stuff. But that's the balance patch. That's all we get for now. Stay tuned for more news. I want to try out that Siege engine. Cool. Very unexpected. Yeah, ultralisks are smaller. I saw Artois reaction to the patch notes for the most part. Yeah, I enjoyed reading that patch.